seems like the Wolves are already circling, a lot of dirt coming out around Michael Bloomberg, and you can see he's got a lot of his competitors on edge.
That's right. It's going to be a fascinating debate for Bloomberg today. He's got basically an unprecedented spend already on the ground in the Super Tuesday states, and it's really offended a lot of the Democratic candidates who have worked so hard and for so many months, you know, doing that retail politics on the ground, talking to voters, and Michael Bloomberg has just inserted himself into their homes. So he's riled up a lot of the Democratic competitors, and they'll be really chomping at the bit today to rip into him.
And it does seem like it's a real test for a lot of these candidates, how they interact with Michael Bloomberg, because in a lot of ways he's very similar in his manner to Donald Trump. And so this will be a real test of how contenders like Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar, who are the more moderate, more placid, you'd say, contenders, how they deal with someone as aggressive as Michael Bloomberg.
That's right. So both Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar have had to talk during the campaign about how they would take on Donald Trump. Amy Klobuchar has said she'll use humour, which is an interesting strategy. We'll see if that comes out today. And Pete Buttigieg has made the point that he's going to contrast himself with Donald Trump in terms of his service to the country and more generally his family values, he's said in recent weeks. So you can expect possibly Amy Klobuchar to test a bit of that out this afternoon when we have the debate, but also for Pete Buttigieg to try and keep his momentum alive by putting some runs on the board against Bloomberg. But a really big challenge for all these candidates as well is obviously the surge of Bernie Sanders. They don't want it to look like it's Bloomberg versus Sanders. They don't want to write themselves off. So Sanders will probably see some flack coming his way on the stage today as well.
And it does seem like Bernie Sanders has held pretty well in the polls, even with the introduction of Michael Bloomberg. Do you think, however, there will be that kind of distinction of him from Michael Bloomberg on just some of their policy positions? And in particular, Michael Bloomberg's already under attack for his interaction with the African-American community, and that's where Bernie Sanders claims a bit more strength.
Exactly. So Bloomberg's been trying to correct his record somewhat on with black voters. He's been showing advertisements that show black business owners in New York who said they couldn't have opened their business without Michael Bloomberg. But we just keep seeing all of these tapes come out from his previous tenure and his policies on things like redlining and stop and frisk, which were all found to adversely affect the black community. And Bernie Sanders doesn't agree almost with Michael Bloomberg as a person. He said that billionaires shouldn't exist. So certainly it's in Sanders's and Bloomberg's interest to give the idea that this is a two-horse race. For Bloomberg, he wants it to look like he's the real challenge and everyone else is just qualifying to debate or to face him once we get to Super Tuesday. So that's where the real contest will be. You'll see the moderators drawn towards this Sanders-Bloomberg divide, maybe a bit of Elizabeth Warren in there as well. She holds some similar positions to Bernie Sanders on billionaires rather. But that's certainly where this debate has the battle lines drawn.
And it's interesting, when I was in the United States, I know without fail every single person asked me about the bushfires. You've done some research into what impact this season's bushfires is going to have on tourism with the United States.
That's right. We've looked at tourism. We've got some research coming out actually on that in the next couple of weeks to see how Americans have viewed the bushfires, whether it will impact their decision to actually travel to Australia. But what we were looking at specifically this week was, we've talked so much about tourism, but how else will these bushfires affect Australia's economy? And one of the ways that hasn't been talked about too much is Australia's agricultural exports. Australia's brand overseas is really tied up with this notion of a natural beauty, a clean country, and with this news just for months and months of a smoke-covered Australia, we wanted to get an idea of how Australia's agriculture has to adapt and innovate, as this will be a continuing challenge. So we were looking at networks in the ag tech community, and really if you look at the example of Israel, which has innovated its way out of a harsh climate to really build this strong agricultural brand, we were looking at how Australia needs to set up the foundations to do the same sort of thing as we see these fires and floods get worse, and do continuing and long-lasting damage to Australia's brand, especially in the middle classes in Asia. So we found Australia was lagging, but we found that Australia and New Zealand can actually work together to draw in investment from countries like the United States to build this brand as a technologically innovative country and hold on to that reputation in the face of these adverse challenges like bushfires and floods.
Well, very interesting idea there. We'll look forward to your research. Elliot Brennan from the United States Studies Centre, thank you for your time.
Thanks so much.